There is a sentence from the Second World War that has never really stopped being used. In time of war, the truth is so precious that a bodyguard of lies should always attend her. Churchill said it about a war. Hold on to it. It comes back. I want to start with the part of this story that nobody disputes, because everything I am going to say afterwards depends on it. And because the disputed parts of this subject have swallowed the undisputed parts so completely that most people who have heard of the case have never been told the one fact about it that is actually settled. Albuquerque, New Mexico, 1978. A man sets up a camera on the back of his property and points it at the Manzano Mountains. He is not a hobbyist. He runs an instrument company that has been selling specialized temperature and humidity equipment since 1969 to clients including NASA. He knows how to build a sensor, and he knows how to read what comes off it. What he is pointing his camera at is the eastern edge of Kirtland Air Force Base. Underneath those mountains, at that time, sits one of the largest nuclear weapons storage facilities in the world. He photographs lights. He records signals he can't identify. And over the next 2 years, he assembles, from real data honestly gathered, a conclusion that will destroy him. What is a man like that supposed to conclude? His name is Paul Bennewitz. Have you heard of him? Most people haven't. He is not obscure inside this subject. He is one of its foundations. A great deal of what people believe about underground bases and treaties and the things that are supposed to be happening beneath the American Southwest came out of what happened to this one man between 1980 and 1988. And almost none of the people repeating it could tell you his name. There is a word for seeing meaning in things that are not connected to each other. The word is a medical sociologist named Robert Bartholomew uses it to describe what happens when a person or a crowd finds a shape in scattered events and cannot afterwards unsee it. It is not stupidity. It is what pattern-finding animals do when the pattern-finding runs without a break. Most of the time, apophenia is a mistake.
A person joins dots that were never joined. It is the commonest failure mode of an intelligent mind working with incomplete information. And I am not going to pretend I am immune to it, because I am not. And neither is anybody watching this. This is a story about the one case where the dots were joined on purpose, where somebody put them there, where a man found a real pattern in real data, and the pattern had been placed in front of him by people whose job that was. A scholar named Mark West writes one sentence about Paul Bennewitz that I have not been able to put down since I read it. He thought Bennewitz was indeed the victim of a conspiracy, but it was not the conspiracy. Remember that too. So what was he actually recording? When I started reading into this, I expected to find a crank. That is what the shape of the story leads you to expect, and I think it is what most of the tellings quietly want, because a crank is easier. He isn't a crank. That's the first thing to get straight, because the rest of it doesn't work otherwise. He is an electrical physicist. He has a business with federal customers. When he brings his material to the Air Force, they do not laugh him out of the building. They send 2 men to look at it. Here is what the Air Force knew that Bennewitz did not. He was recording something real. Not lights in the sky that could be explained away. Not a weather balloon. He had inadvertently acquired information about a classified Air Force program, and he had done it from his own back garden with equipment he built himself. That is the position the United States Air Force found itself in during the summer of 1980.
And I want you to feel how narrow it was. Because a man with a camera and a receiver and no security clearance at all was standing in his own garden gathering accurate data on a program that the government had spent an enormous amount of money and effort keeping quiet. And there was no version of the truth they could tell him that did not also tell him the thing they were hiding. They could not correct him without confessing.
They could not confirm him without confessing. Silence would not work either, because he was already writing to people. Now think about the options in that room. They could classify him. They could threaten him. They could seize the equipment and take the consequences of a lawsuit. They did none of those things. Captain Ruppelt, running the Air Force's own UFO project decades earlier, had already noticed something that explains why. He noted that there were concentrations of cases in the Los Alamos, Albuquerque area, Oak Ridge, White Sands, Strategic Air Command locations, ports, and industrial sites. Read that list again. Are those places where the sky is unusual? Those are the places where the secrets are. The sightings did not cluster on the heavens. They clustered on the things America was hiding. So what does a government do when a citizen accidentally finds one? In 1980, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations assigned an agent to him. His name is Richard Doty. His assignment wasn't surveillance in the ordinary sense. According to multiple sources, he was given the assignment to create fake documents and give false information to UFO researchers. He has admitted this. Publicly, on a stage, in 2019, at a UFO convention in Laughlin, Nevada, in front of the community he had spent years deceiving. He acknowledged participating in surveillance of UFO groups and in disseminating false information. He admits he fed disinformation to Bennewitz and to other UFO researchers, forged documents, and muddied the waters. And this wasn't one man freelancing. That office, for a period, spread disinformation about UFO cases and sent operatives to UFO conventions to gather intelligence. His account of the instruction is specific, and it's apparently the only account we have. He says he was told to make him believe there was an impending alien invasion because the man was actually observing secret military projects. They wanted to discredit him so no one would figure that out. Do you see what that involves? Sit with the shape of that. The purpose was never to make a man doubt that aliens exist. The purpose was to make him certain of it. To take a citizen who was inconveniently close to something true and bury that truth underneath a louder, stranger, more thrilling lie and let him carry it. Did it stop at paperwork? It didn't. He claims that in doing so, he created hoaxed documents that were given to Bennewitz and other UFO researchers, and that he broke into Bennewitz's house and office. The journalist reporting it does not soften what that means. Some, if not all of which, is illegal. And then there is the part almost nobody tells you, the part that I think should be the headline of this entire case, and is instead a paragraph buried in a decade-old article by a journalist who had to file a Freedom of Information request to get it. He worked out that something was being done to him. He wasn't passive. He went to his elected representatives. 2 United States senators from New Mexico called or showed up at the base to check on the investigation of Bennewitz and his contacts. He had sought their help. Both times, the senators were told there was no investigation. That claim does not rest on Doty's word. A journalist named Alejandro Rojas filed the Freedom of Information request himself and read the file. He confirmed that Doty did give him documents that would make him believe he was under investigation, even though Doty told both senators that this was not the case. So what does the file actually contain? It holds 2 things at once. A man is handed forged papers telling him he is being investigated.
and the senators he asks for help are told he is not. Now go back to Churchill. In time of war, the truth is so precious that a bodyguard of lies should always attend her. Churchill said it about deceiving an enemy army in a world war. This was a man in Albuquerque with a camera in peacetime, and the bodyguard was posted around a private citizen's mind. Here is where the story stops being about aliens. The conspiracy in which he was actually embroiled was a disinformation campaign by that same office and Doty, their agent, to conceal the development of secret technologies at a nearby base. Secret technologies. Not visitors. Not a treaty. Aircraft. Does that sound like an I think it's the opposite. West is more specific than that. Despite uncovering evidence of stealth technology development, the governmental conspiracy misled Bennewitz into believing in another imaginary conspiracy. And this is not one academic's reading.
In 2024, the Pentagon's own Anomaly Office published a historical report, and it says the same thing in the flattest possible institutional language. Some portion of sightings since the 1940s have represented misidentification of never-before-seen experimental and operational space, rocket, and air systems, including stealth technologies. The same report contains a story that is this entire film in miniature. Investigators interviewed a man who said that a former military officer had told him he had physically touched an off-world craft. They tracked the officer down. He denied it. He said the only thing he could think of, the only moment it could possibly have been, was the time he touched an F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. A man was certain he had put his hand on alien technology. He had put his hand on an airplane. I find that story almost unbearable, and not because it is funny. It is not funny. Somewhere in that man's life, there was a night that meant something enormous to him, a night he presumably told people about, a night that may well have reorganized what he thought the universe was. And the whole of it rests on a shape in the dark that had a serial number and a maintenance schedule and a hang. That is what was under the lights over the manzana. That is the thing the bodyguard was posted around. Not a secret about the universe, a secret about procurement. And he never got to know it. How do you tell a man that the thing that ate his life was a procurement secret? The campaign drove him to a nervous breakdown. He checked into a mental health facility due to paranoia. He came out. He did not come back. He never recovered. The material did, though. The stories Doty invented did not stop at the edge of one man's property. The material given to Bennewitz became enduring components of UFO lore, leading conspiracy entrepreneurs to elaborate on that material. Underground bases, a treaty, hybrid programs, whole shelves of it, decades of it, still selling. If the story was manufactured, why is the field still built on it? Now, I have to be fair to the other side, because the other side is not stupid, and its argument is better than the debunk usually allows. Here it is at full strength, and it comes from West himself, the same scholar. The bodyguard of lies surrounding the Bennewitz matter suggests that even the most outlandish conspiracy theories deserve attention because of the actual conspiracies that may lie behind them. That is a real point, and it survives everything I have said. The affair doesn't prove there is nothing to hide. It proves the opposite of that. It proves the government will run an operation against one of its own citizens on this subject and lie to the Senate about it, and that every official denial afterwards is worth a little less. And notice what has never happened. The Air Force refuses to comment on whether they knew of his activities and whether his claims of partaking in this activity at the behest of his superiors is accurate. 40 years. A named agent describing a named operation against a named citizen. And silence. What would you call that? There is a second problem, and it runs the other way. Richard Doty is not a reliable narrator. He is a man who built his career on deceiving this community, now describing his own deceptions to that same community from a stage with a book table. The admission is corroborated by documents. The elaborations around it are not. Anybody who takes his word as evidence has learned nothing at all from this story. So we are left with two frames, and here is the trap. A cover-up sophisticated enough to confess to the small crime in order to retire the large one would look exactly like Richard Doty's confession. That claim cannot be disproved. Nothing could count against it. And that isn't a strength. That is the condition they engineered inside him on purpose. Watch it run in the other direction, on our own side of the table. Carla Turner, who researched abduction accounts, reportedly died in January 1996 at the age of 48 of cancer. In the years since, her death has been folded into a pattern. The record gives her manner of death as natural causes, which is defined as a manner of death not involving external or willful factors. The next one is harder. John Mack was a Harvard professor and a Pulitzer Prize winner who took this subject seriously when it cost him to do it.
On the 27th of September, 2004, he was in London for a conference. He was walking home alone after dinner with friends when he was struck at 11:25 at night near the junction of Totteridge Lane and Longland Drive. The driver was named Raymond. He was an IT manager. He was arrested at the scene and pled guilty to careless driving while under the influence of alcohol. Mack's death is described in this field as an assassination. Is that what it looks like to you? I want to tell you what his family did. They wrote to the Wood Green Crown Court and requested leniency for the driver. Although this was a tragic event for our family, the letter reads, we feel his behavior was neither malicious nor intentional, and we have no ill will toward him. The people with the most reason to want a murder said there hadn't been one. What does it cost a family to write that letter? So I want to ask the question that this whole investigation actually turns on, and I want to ask it seriously rather than rhetorically, because I do not think it has a comfortable answer, and I am not going to manufacture one. How would anyone tell the difference from the inside? On the 27th of February, 2026, a retired Air Force Major General walked out of his house in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and did not come back. His name is William Neal McCasland. He is 68 years old. He oversaw classified space weapons programs. He ran research at Wright-Patterson, which is, in the folklore of this subject, perhaps the most storied address in America. He left his phone. He left his wearable devices. He left his prescription glasses. Merriman spoke to him at about 10 in the morning. His wife left for a medical appointment at 10 past 11. She came home at 4 minutes past 12, and he was gone. She reported him missing at 7 minutes past 3. Speculation started spreading through social media following the disappearance. It has not stopped since. The FBI joined the search. A congressional committee started asking federal agencies for information. It is now a national story. And I want to put the record next to the story, because they are not the same thing. And because I think the gap between them is the most important thing in this film. What does the record actually say? The sheriff of Bernalillo County, where McCasland lived, has said there was no evidence indicating foul play in his disappearance. His wife has said that since his retirement, more than a decade ago, he had only very commonly held security clearances, and that he suffered from a chronic health issue at the time of his disappearance. The wider cluster that grew up around him, 10 cases, then 13, is thinner than it looks. The cases span several years and involve unrelated circumstances, including natural death, homicide, suicide, and missing person reports. Colleagues of those named, as well as experts and journalists, have rejected claims of a coordinated pattern. Michael Shermer described how the list was assembled, digging around to find anyone who died for any reason or has disappeared, then going through their bio to see if they have any connection whatsoever to UFOs, military, defense, space, aerospace, propulsion. He has a phrase for what that procedure produces: patterns in random noise. Benjamin Radford has another: mystery-mongering data mining. Is that a finding? I do not think it is. That is not a discovery. That is a search. Decide the shape first, then go and find things that fit it, and the world is large enough that you will always find them. And it costs something to people who are alive right now. Multiple family members of those connected to the theory have expressed anguish or grief at having their deceased relatives connected to what they have characterized as an absurdity. I want to be exact about what I am claiming here, because it would be easy to be lazy. I am not saying I know what happened to William McCasland. Nobody does. The case is open and a family's waiting. I am saying that the machinery has been running for 6 months, and that not one piece of it required anybody in the government to plant a thing. In 1980, it took a special agent, a set of forged documents, 2 lies to the Senate, and a burglary to build a false pattern inside one man.
The Pentagon's own report describes what does that work now. Internet search and content recommendation algorithms serve to reinforce individuals' preconceptions and confirmation biases, just as much as to help educate and inform. Same city, same institution, 36 years apart. What is different? A political scientist looking at the 2026 case said the thing that has been sitting underneath this whole investigation. Your average conspiracy theory, someone comes up with it and it dies on the vine. What makes this unique is you have government agents with guns investigating this. In 1980, government agents with guns manufactured a UFO conspiracy in Albuquerque. In 2026, government agents with guns are investigating one. Is that progress? I don't find it reassuring. Go back to the sentence I could not put down. He thought Bennewitz was indeed the victim of a conspiracy, but it was not the conspiracy. He was right. That is the part everyone skips. He was correct that something was above those mountains, correct that it was being concealed, correct that his government was lying to him about it, and correct that he was personally the target of an operation. Every instinct he had was sound. He was wrong about one thing only, and it was the thing they chose for him. There was no test he could have run. He had real photographs and real signal and real documents with real letterhead. And the documents were forged and the letterhead was genuine. We know that pattern was planted for exactly one reason. A man who worked for the Air Force eventually sat down and said so. That is it. That is the whole mechanism of discovery. Not analysis, not evidence. A confession, volunteered, decades late, by someone who felt like talking. There was never any other test. There is not one now. And I want to be careful here, because the easy move at this point is to turn the whole thing into a lesson about gullible people. And that is not what I think happened. He wasn't gullible.
he was rigorous. He gathered his own data, he checked it, he escalated it through proper channels, he went to his elected representatives, and every single one of those decisions was the correct decision. And the correctness of them is precisely what the operation used against him. Was the handle they held him by. So when I look at a spreadsheet of dead scientists, I am not able to tell you which kind of pattern I am looking at, and I have stopped pretending that I can. Neither can the people building it, neither can the Congress. Neither, I suspect, can the Bureau. The record stops. The file closes. The drawer stays shut.